Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's I've Decided podcast. I'm Kim Martin, founder of I've Decided. And so the question we are asking this week is, what are your natural abilities? What are your God-given strengths? Such a fun thing to talk about, such a fun topic. Our weekly winning word this week is innate. Innate. We don't use it very often, but it is a great word, and it just talks about what we're born with. In fact, I'll read you the Webster Dictionary, and then I'll give you kind of what I like to say layman terms, right? So the Webster Dictionary defines innate as determined by factors present in an individual from birth. So it's inborn. In other words, it is your natural talents, exactly what we're talking about. Natural gifts, natural talents, natural strengths. So my guest with me today is Jennifer Haney. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here because as soon as I saw this word, your name popped in my head. And I'll tell you why, because Jennifer is a Clifton strengths coach. And if you don't know, Clifton Strengths is an assessment that you take to find out what your natural strengths are and what you're kind of good at. And so I couldn't think of a better person than you to be on the podcast with me this week.
Thank you. I feel like it's a perfect fit. I loved listening to your presentation on this and reading it. And yeah, I am all about innate talents, otherwise known as strengths. So
absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Yay. So, all right. So tell me a little bit about you, Jennifer, and how did you get passionate about Clifton Strengths, and how did you find that and become an expert and coach in that field?
Well, that goes way back, but it started at one point when I was having sort of a career crisis, and I was interviewing with different people in the company to try to find out what I might do that was different than what I was doing. And someone suggested to me, hey, have you ever thought about getting trained to be a Clifton Strengths coach? And I knew what Clifton Strengths was. I'd taken the assessment and I thought it was cool. But I said, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. One thing led to another. I got to do the training to be a coach, and I fell in love with coaching. And what really made me passionate about it, though, was an experience that I had. And I was able to go back after being a coach and understand that one of the jobs that I was in that I wasn't doing very well at, in my opinion, and I wasn't loving, was complete mismatch with my natural talents. And so I couldn't put that together until I became a coach and kind of understood the theory, and it just clicked with me, and I was passionate to help other people not make that same mistake. If I had known what my strengths were before I took that job, I probably wouldn't have taken it, and I would have gone in a different direction and continued to be happy with my position and continue to grow. So it was very transformational for me, and again, it gave me that passion to want to help others to be their best and be in a zone where they are happy and successful.
That's awesome. Well, and it's so important, so much so that large companies actually pay to have their employees to take this assessment so that they can move them in the direction of their strengths, right?
Yes, exactly.
And you've even done, corporate coaching for these companies. So it is so important. And it's one of the topics in our weekly winning article, which we're going to talk about. But, I don't think that, as coaches, we are helping people be their best selves. Right. And so we see the talents in people and we see what they're good at. But I think a lot of times people don't see their natural gifts and talents. And a lot of times it's buried in fear. I think about someone who has a natural gift to sing. And my daughter being one of them, and will only sing in the shower or in their room when they're alone by themselves, right? And they're just not sharing that voice, and they're so gifted at it, but they're afraid. So their talents are buried. Yeah. Do you find that a lot when you're coaching? Because I know they take when someone works with you, they take the assessment. Yeah. And that Clifton Strengths assessment is pretty intense. and it comes out pretty accurate. I know that you did both of my daughters. I've done it,
Mhm.
and it comes out pretty accurate.
Yeah, it is amazingly accurate.
And so,
Yeah.
do you find when you're coaching someone that people are like they get shy about what they are good at?
I don't find that as much. I think what it does is before you take the assessment, you kind of know who you are, but maybe you're not sure. And when you get the results back from the assessment, which the assessment is easy, it's a little bit long, but it's not.
It's not a hard.
It's not a hard
It's not like a
assessment.
test.
Yeah, it's not a hard assessment. But it gives you the knowledge and the power to really own what you are.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have that confidence to go out and kind of pursue that.
Right.
Whereas before you don't really know what you're good at, and so you try this and you try that. And this, to me, it just gives you direction. It gives you clear direction so you can march forward in confidence and not have to wonder.
I just think that every young adult coming out of high school going into college should take this assessment.
Yeah.
I know you love working with that population.
Yeah.
My daughters loved their coaching session with you.
Thanks.
And they actually were like, we learned so much, so that's good because, I can't teach them anything, right? They have to have
well, you're mom. You can't.
I'm mom. So
right.
If you're like me and you have some teenagers going into college, I want to just encourage that. So it's awesome. But back to the word innate, and I just love this word so much because it's about your purpose. It's saying that you were thought out. When you recognize that you have these gifts, these abilities, these talents that nobody else has. You have a story that no one else has. So that aligns with your gifts and your talents, that you can do things that nobody else can do. Maybe similarly.
Right.
But not exactly the same.
Yeah, I love that, and I've heard you talk about that before, and it's kind of like maybe there's 5 people in a room, and you were created in a way that you connect with that person,
right?
Whereas the person next to you, was meant to connect with someone else, and it's how you're wired. It's way more than Clifton strengths. It's what God gives us. But I'm sure you've been in that situation where that connection was meant to be, and you found something for that person, or vice versa. Yeah. Someone touched your heart and showed you something. So yeah, I love that. And the strengths, I think there's millions of different permutations of just this one assessment. So yeah, everyone is unique. You may have the same top strengths, but they're surrounded by other ones.
And it's like your fingerprint. It's your fingerprint. It's unique. Nobody else has the same fingerprint. It's because you are granted these special gifts, talents. You were born into a certain situation intentionally.
Yeah.
And when we recognize that, that's a part, our theme this year at I've Decided is unlimit your life. And when you start to recognize that, it really does help you start to take off those caps, to start thinking with an unlimited, mindset of what the possibilities are. So it's super duper exciting. And obviously you believe this as a strengths coach, is that we need to focus on what we're good at.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we understand what we're good at so that we can work upon improving those skills.
That's some of the basic theory is get better at what you're good at, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Some people think, oh, I'm already good at that. I should really work on these things I'm terrible at. And whether that's a Clifton strengths thing that's at the bottom of the list, or whether that's other things, you've used the example of singing. I'm also not a singer. So I don't spend my time trying to be a good singer.
Right.
I spend my time trying to be good at the things I'm good at, and maybe cooking, right? And do better and better at cooking, and learn more recipes and more tricks and tips and things in that space that I like and that I'm kind of good at. But yeah, stick with what you're good at, and then just grow that more and more and more. And that will lead to your success. And understand, to your point, the things you're not good at. So you when that comes up, hey, that's not my best thing. Maybe I can ask someone else. Right. I can delegate that to the person who is good at it, because that's the beauty. It's all those different permutations. Someone is good at that, and someone loves to do it. And that was so freeing to me because I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
does anyone like to do that? Well, sure
Yes,
enough, they do.
They
So,
do in all areas.
Yeah, I hand it off and they're happy. I'm happy. It's a win-win.
Absolutely. So we all get to work in our strengths. It's
Yeah.
just great.
It's beautiful.
So, okay. So the article that I sent out to all of our members this week, we talked, because I said the key to tapping into your innate abilities, those natural gifts and talents, is to understand and to be clear about what they are, and really admit it. Say it. I said to my daughter Katie, I said, I want you to say, "Mom, I'm a good singer." Like, admit it out loud. And she just looks at me. She's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, say it. You are. So it is so hard for us to do that.
Yeah.
I used to, my tagline now is Kim Martin Motivates. And I've always wanted, ever since I heard Zig Ziglar speak for the very first time, I knew I want to do what he does.
Yeah.
I'll obviously will probably never be a Zig Ziglar or at that caliber, and that's okay. But I knew that he changed the way I saw things, and I wanted to be that to someone else.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker, but I never said it. I was so embarrassed by it. I didn't feel worthy. Well, we all do that, and I didn't feel like if I said, well, I want to be a motivational speaker, someone would be like, you're not very much, it's like my daughter, when she says, if I say I can sing, somebody might go, you really can't sing. It's the same kind of concept, right? So we have to be aware and voice it, admit it, know what you're good at, own what you're good at, and own what you're not so good at. So how do we do it? And I talked about 4 ways, and obviously we've been talking about assessments, and specifically the Clifton Strengths Assessment, because you're my guest and you're a Clifton Strengths coach, and that's what you're an expert in.
Right.
And it is considered one, if not the number one strength finders kind of assessment out there, right?
It's a very popular assessment. There are other things too, but I like this one the best. And I'm a little biased, but I really do. I've had that feedback from a lot of other people too that have been coached, that it just is very simple and easy to understand and work with. So
so that's the one of the first things I talk about in the article is take an assessment. And again, there are others out there, but the most important thing is figure out what you're good at. If you're not sure, you need to start somewhere, and a good place to start is by taking an assessment, as they've been well thought out.
Yeah.
And anyone can take these assessments. They're good. Who are is there anyone that it's probably not a good idea to do this? Where's, who's this good for?
No, you pretty much said it. It can benefit anyone. I guess I would say very young people, probably not. They're maybe not at that point where they can answer the questions. But anyone in their teens and on up, it's a great opportunity, and it can benefit you. Even if you're in retirement, it can still be a good, useful tool to understand where you thrive. And it's interesting, it's fun as well.
It is fun.
So it really applies to, I'd say, everyone. It can benefit your work life, your family life, volunteer life, everything. It just helps give you some direction in all those spaces.
I got to go back and talk to Kinsley and Katie and refresh. I wanted them to refresh me of where they're, remind them of, and bring that back to their forefront and say, because of this, it's kind of triggered my thoughts on that. Okay. The second thing I said is, we've talked about this too. Don't ignore your weaknesses. You've got to be aware of what you're not so good at. And you can surround yourself with people that are good at that. And you said that already.
Right. Yeah.
And also, one of the things, and we were talking about this before we started recording this podcast, is sometimes your strengths can be a weakness if you're not careful. And we used a loud voice as an example. I don't know why we would use that, but whatever. Anyway, right. So if I'm speaking to a large group of people and I don't have a microphone, my loud voice is a talent. It's a gift, and it's great.
Yeah.
Because people can hear me clearly. Someone who who may be a little harder of hearing, they can hear me clearly. It's so funny. I see them taking out their hearing aids sometimes, like, ah! Anyway, but if I walk into a library or I'm talking to someone who's a little more sensitive to that loud tone, I have to be aware of that and watch out for that body language or know where I'm at, because it could quickly turn into getting shushed or, those kinds of things.
Has that ever happened to you?
If I had $1 for every time I've been shushed in my life, I would be a gazillionaire.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Well, can I give another example of that?
Yes.
You talked about the loud voice, and one of the ones I like to share from my Clifton Strengths lineup, my number one is responsibility. So that means I'm very responsible. I get things done. I try to do what I say I'm going to do. And that's all good, right? People like that, especially at the workplace, right? And at home. But responsibility for me has been a weakness, because one of the downsides of it is you feel responsible to say yes to whatever someone asks you to do. So you end up saying yes to things, and then you are stressed out, exhausted, overwhelmed, and that's not good.
No.
Right?
So there's a great example.
Yeah. So the weakness is, responsibility is great, but it's not great when you're overcommitting yourself.
No.
So that's another example of a weakness that actually derives from your strengths.
Remember, we had one of our weekly winning words this year was no. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I that's one of the investments I made in my strengths, was to say, okay, I'm going to say no to things that really aren't in my strengths zones. Like if it was go be a motivational speaker, if Kim said, hey, will you come and really try to motivate this crowd? I'd probably say no, but I'll come and help you out and, talk with the people around the tables quietly, one-on-one. Yeah.
Right.
So
yes, I get it. That is so good. It is so good. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that, because that's just another great example. So, be aware of what your strengths are, be aware of what your weaknesses are, and know how to manage them well.
Right.
You said that before. Managing both that's the key. So just understanding that. And then another great way is to ask people.
Yeah.
Ask the people that are closest to you.
Yeah.
What do you think I'm good at? I think another weekly winning word we had this year was feedback.
Yeah.
And in that article, I said, you have to ask for feedback. People generally aren't going to just walk up to you and say, hey, let me tell you what you did good, and let me tell you what you can work on.
Right.
That's just not a general. You have to ask someone. It's the same with this. You can ask them, what do you think my strengths are? Where do you see me shining?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And a lot of times I think when you get that feedback, it probably does align with your talents. So build on that, whether you have an assessment or not. If people keep saying, hey, you're good at that, or people keep asking you to do that particular thing, you're like, I must be good at that. Otherwise they wouldn't be asking.
And you want to know something that just came to my mind?
Yes.
God is so good that he will put you in a situation so that people can tell you, you should do this. Isn't that amazing? When I think, and you can probably think on your life, and you guys listening, when I think back on my life and how I landed in curves, and then I landed as a mentor doing training for other owners, and then I would have a group of people that I was training, and not because I was like seeking that out. It was kind of just evolving from my talents, right? And then these owners would say, you should be a motivational speaker. You're so good at this. I don't know if I taught them a lot of detailed stuff, but they left fired up.
That's right.
And they were ready to accomplish something. And so I started to recognize I want to do it, and I'm actually good at it. And it's the same. And we know I'm not saying that in a braggish way. I'm saying that you're the same.
Yeah. Everyone has that.
Everyone has that. Everyone has that.
A different flavor of that. But
a different flavor.
Definitely.
But you have it. Everyone has it. And it looks different for each of us. But somebody has said to you, you're really good at that. And I guarantee you were happy. Like whatever it is that you did, and they said you're really good at that, you loved it.
Yep.
You were like, oh, I just loved it.
Yeah.
I had so much fun.
I'm getting teary-eyed, goosebumps just thinking about it, because it's so true. And it goes back to that innate, right? And that's what you are naturally good at. God gave that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me my stuff, and all of you your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're all good at something.
And you're put in a position to know it.
Yes.
That's something you have to see. You've got to see that. Think about it. You have been put in a position to kind of know.
Yep.
But I, even though I'm, like you said, we kind of know what our strengths are. When I did the assessment, some of the things surprised me.
Yeah.
It wasn't all like exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought I could have had it pegged, and you're like, well, actually, that's a little lower, or that's a little higher. Sometimes we think we're good at something that we might not be so good at, or you have life skills that you learn. You know what else we talked about when we were talking about doing this podcast is like you learn a strength later on in life. So like I talked about writing, because I didn't think writing was a strength because I'm not an inspired writer. One of our success coaches, Molly, she writes poetry and, inspired writing. So that's more of a natural God-given talent there, right? Where I write in a different way. So I didn't feel like that was a gift, but you mentioned something. You said,
well, she said, I'm not a good writer like Molly, because Molly writes differently. So you probably wouldn't be good if you were trying to write what Molly writes, but you are a great writer for your motivational articles and those things. I read them and think, man, she's good.
Oh, thanks.
So she is a talented writer.
But that could be something that came later. I didn't even realize.
Once you started to do it, it was always a talent, but it was, kind of buried. And then once you got into it,
it started to come out.
Right.
So in that way, so you can even have a talent, but it's relative to you. You don't compare your talent. So I was thinking I wasn't a good writer because I was comparing myself to an inspired writer, a poet, what do you call it? A lyrist. Is that the right term?
I don't know.
Is that the right term, Molly, if you're listening to this? Anyway, she's just that, like a person who writes a song. That inspired.
Right.
I've heard people that, like some of the artists say, they just sit down and the song just
comes to them.
Just poured right in their heart. And you're just like, what?
Yeah, I don't have that either. So
if that ever happens to me, we'll know it's God.
Yeah.
Because I've never had that happen before. Anyway, so ask others. And then finally, and this is kind of a no-brainer too, but these are just ways that you don't think about. Know what you love. What is it that gets you fired up? What makes your heart sing?
And I can say, being a coach, and I keep talking about that, but when I had that opportunity to go to the training and started doing the coaching, that's it. And I get done with a session, whether it's a team session or an individual session with a stranger or a family member, and I get done and I feel so happy. I mean, I'm like on top of the world. That was great. I could do this all day long versus some of my other jobs where, you clock out and ready to go, right?
So, I feel the same way.
It's just a matter of what your passion is, what you're wired for, and when you're in that zone, it feels great.
And it fills up. It gives you that energy to do the things that you don't love to do, like clean house. I'm like, for example, like yesterday, so like Tuesdays, the first Tuesday of every month is our virtual monthly session that I facilitate with all of our members. It's a member only virtual, so it's on Zoom, but it's live. And we did that yesterday. And exactly what you just said. It's like I was done with that Zoom and I was just so fired up and so excited. I finished cleaning my house, and I actually worked until like 9:00 cleaning my house, and I had the energy because that filled me up. I did something so when you do the things that you love, you're working in your strengths. It really does fill up your little pot of oil. So that you can go pour out on the things that you don't love doing so much, like cleaning your house or, I don't know, mowing the lawn, chores. Maybe some people like doing that. Some people one of my good friends, she loves working in the yard. So I shouldn't say mowing the lawn is not as a chore for everybody, but
just for you.
Well, I don't do it. Some chores you're just not going to do. Joe does the lawn. That's his chore. I clean the house mostly. He helps too, but I'll do some work I don't really do yard work. I like to look at a pretty yard. I want my yard to be pretty.
I'm sure Joe does a good job.
He does a great job. He likes it. So,
but to that point though, when you're doing the things that you love, which God has given you the gifts to do, which are mostly your strengths,
right?
Yeah, your whole life is better. It carries on to the other things too. It makes everything more enjoyable when you have that positive piece of,
because we all have to do things we don't like.
Yeah.
It's not all about strengths.
Yeah, you don't always get to just do your strengths, but it makes it easier to do those things.
Yes, but when you're aware, you can go, I need to jump on something that I love to do so that I can refuel, so that I can go do some things that we don't love to do, because this is life, and things happen that's not fun, and blah, blah, blah. But when we work in those strengths and we focus on that, and really that's what it's all about. That's why I've decided to exist. That's why we're here. We just want to be our best selves, and we want to help you be your best self. And when you focus on those innate abilities, those God-given talents, when you know what those strengths are, then it makes it that much better. It helps you move through life and fulfill that purpose that there are things that we got to accomplish while we're here. I don't know how long it's going to take, or how long we have, or what it is, but we know that there are certain things that we're put here to accomplish while we're here, and we got to keep working towards that. And our innate abilities guide us.
Definitely.
And kind of lead the way. So thank you, Jennifer, for what you do. Thank you for being a Clifton Strengths coach, helping people be better.
Thank you.
And figuring out what they're good at. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for being a motivator and keeping us all motivated and moving forward towards our goals. It's been life-changing for me to be part of this organization. So I thank you. I don't show up at all the meetings, but it's always still great.
Well, remember, it's opportunity, right? Not obligation.
Yep.
So we provide a lot of opportunities, a lot of benefits to our members. And if you try to do everything, it'd be a lot, because we want to make sure there's plenty to access, to tap into
things.
Yes,
which is great also.
Thank you. So, you could be a member of I've Decided too. We'd love to have you in our community. It really is a quick decision. You go to ivedecided.org, pick out the membership that makes sense for you. You can get on-demand coaching every week in our Success membership. You can have a live coach in a group setting, or one-on-one coaching, whichever makes sense for you. We have corporate benefits as well. So if you're tuning in and you're a decision maker in your organization, or you work for a company and you go, hey, they should offer this benefit to us, reach out to us. We'd love to help you out. And Jennifer, how can they reach you if they're interested in doing the assessment and doing that coaching? I think it's an hour and a half, 90-minute coaching session that you provide. Yep. So you can do the assessment and an hour and a half coaching with Jennifer, because if you do the assessment without the coaching, that's kind of, you can do it, but you really want to have your expertise to help break it down, because otherwise it's a little overwhelming, I think.
You get more value from it if you have the coaching as well. So I can be reached at JenCoach, JenCoach, at protonmail.com. So that's my email, and you can send me a message if you want to learn more about it.
That'd be awesome. And you can also find her, you're listed as a resource on our website at ivedecided.org too. So when you hop on there to join, you can click on resources and find her there, in case you didn't write that down. So awesome. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this session about our weekly winning word, innate, and that you take time to figure out what your strengths are, be very clear about them, so that you can work towards growing them and living a life fulfilled. Until next week, we'll be back. Bye-bye.
Bye.